Welcome to the OECD webinar. We are very honored today to launch our OECD Teaching Compass, reimagining the teaching profession as change agent for curriculum renewal. And we will be joined by our director, Andreas, and amazing panelists are joining today too, because we have co-created our Teaching Compass. But before we begin, there are some members who are not familiar with our OECD 2040 project. So please allow me to give a little bit of background, because this background matters when you understand the OECD Teaching Compass. So our Teaching Compass didn't come out of blue or from scratch. It is deeply rooted in the Learning Compass, the learning framework, where we really set out what kind of competencies today's students need to thrive and shape a better future, rooted in the concepts such as student agency and student well-being. And now we need to put that vision a reality, the Teaching Compass. And we made sure this Learning Compass and Teaching Compass do have conceptual coherence, which is very important for a vision to be an action. And also how we create it also matters, because our working method of 2040 takes a co-creation approach with the multi-stakeholders, leadership, engagement, and commitment to change. Because at the very beginning of the project, an expert shared a proverb: if you want to go fast, OECD expert, go alone. But if you want to go far and make a real change happen, go together. So together with our primary focus group one, the government representative, but also we really identified all the actors in the ecosystem who make a change happen with the curriculum change, including teachers, school leaders, focus group 2A, and all sorts of focus group 2B, researchers, teacher educators, NGOs, other international organizations, foundations, private sectors, and other social partners. Increasingly, aspiring students matter as well. And of course, students themselves. And now students are very active, even as alumni, taking care of other students and mentoring. So today, we will have a lot of panelists together with Andreas. So before I pass the floor to Andreas, let me walk you through how we are going to spend 1 hour together with an amazing audience, you as well. So first, Andreas will be giving some of the key concepts of the Learning Compass. And there will be 3 rounds of discussion with respective panelists. Why? Because our Teaching Compass is globally informed, but to be locally contextualized. So it's very important for us to make sure that the audience can make sense of abstract concepts in our Teaching Compass. The first focus is really focusing on aligning teaching practices with students' needs. And for that, we have 2 panelists, excellent for this topic, Nadia from the student group and Edwin from the teacher group. So very briefly, can you introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Miho. I am Nadia Kristili from Indonesia. It's nice to meet you, everyone. I have been in FG3 ever since 2022, and last year, in 2024, I was elected as the Student Advisory Group Chair. I am very passionate in science, particularly science research, and I've won multiple competitions about science research, but I'm also very passionate in creative writing.
Hi everyone, my name is Edwin. I'm lead teacher from Hwa Chong Institution in Singapore, and I help students and teachers to discover their strengths and become better versions of themselves. I am a co-chair of OECD's FG2A Schools Network, and I'm so excited to be part of the launch of this Teaching Compass, where we can discuss and work together on empowering teachers to be future-ready educators who can drive meaningful change together. Thank you, Miho.
Thank you, Edwin. And the second round of panelists really focus on enhancing the quality and relevance of teaching, including teacher preparation, which is very important for today's teacher shortage issues. For that, we have excellent panelists, Kenji from Focus Group 2C and Bogdan from Focus Group 1. Can you introduce yourselves?
Thank you, Miho. Hi everyone, I'm Kenji Nakamura. I'm a graduate student in Doctor course of Hiroshima University in Japan and mentor of FT23 in Japan. I have been actively involved in FT2C since 2023 and the student advisory group since 2024. I was also leader in FT2C in Japan until last year. Nice to meet you.
Hello, very nice to be here. I am Bogdan Cristescu, and in my roles as Secretary of State in charge of the curricular reform and the Director of Curriculum and Assessment Directorate, I was part of the FG1 government representative group. For me, it was very, very nice, all this journey, which is crowning today, let's say. I had a significant opportunity. While I was coordinating and be part of the debates here in Romania, in expert groups and everything, I participated in the FG1 meetings and I saw the same challenges, sometimes the same approaches, but at an enhanced level with a 360 degrees participations, policymakers, researchers, teachers, students, NGOs, business, and the ideas were fantastic. And after interactions, they seemed very natural. The fact that we were in the same room, engaging in dialogue with experts and day-to-day practitioners in all their roles was crucial. I have to emphasize the role of students, and Nadia and Kenji are here, in both their capacities, learner and future teachers, with significant questions. How would this journey will be for me if I were a teacher? Which are my strong capacities, where I may need help? What my initial training should be? What expectation from the school community I have? And a lot of questions and a lot of answers, and I hope we will find some answers today.
Excellent. Thank you, Bogdan and Kenji. So the last topic is kind of like hot potato for everybody, and how to integrate digital tools and AI in ways in which they enhance and strengthen both teacher agency and student agency, not unconsciously depriving them. And for that, we have focus group 2B, the researcher, Lisa, and CEO of an EdTech, Ike. Could you briefly introduce yourselves as well?
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Lisa Stevenson, and I am an associate professor at Leeds Beckett University in the Carnegie School of Education in the north of England. And I'm the director of a research centre for creative pedagogies called Storymakers. I'm absolutely, as I say, delighted to be here. Our research nationally and internationally has focused on a specialism of co-design, curriculum co-design, and participatory action research with children and young people. With teachers, we've worked extensively with schools embedding creative curricular approaches, and also in initial teacher education where I still work. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ik. I am the CEO of HoloTracker, a tool based and found in Singapore. You know, by the age of 18, a child would have processed over 4 million feedback moments. 4 million feedback moments. Think about it. It's every time they try to speak up, when they try something new, they look at us adults and ask, what have I done? Have I done it right? Every time they make a mistake, every time someone reacts with a passing statement. Children watch our every response and reaction and build their sense of self, purpose, and possibility in every response. So I think we really need to ask, how much of this feedback do we give as adults actually pay attention to such a growing narrative? And HoloTracker is really a tool that supports teachers and students in growing that gaze and that language and positive feedback. We've worked with over 35,000 learners and teachers across the world in 10 countries, including where I'm born and raised in Singapore. Very excited to be part of this discussion and looking forward to the rest of it.
Okay, thank you. So those are the three focus discussion points. And in the end, there will be a comment, final remark from Andreas. So during this time, if you have questions for panelists, please rigorously use chat box too, for the interest of time. But in the end, we would like to engage audience with a Mentimeter. This is kind of experimental too, to do this in the webinar, but our project is quite pioneering. So please be with us. And for those of you who would like to share your reflections with a global audience, we prepared the 30-minute optional virtual cafe space where you can actually have a dialogue. And this is another feature of our project. So that's our plan today for the next 45 minutes. And now we will give the floor to Andreas to walk you through about our teaching compass. So Andreas, please.
Thank you so much, Miho, and my congratulations really to everyone, to all of those who contributed to this inspiring vision for reimagining what teaching could be. And it's really also, the teaching compass is also fueling the learning compass, bringing it to life. And we know that this learning compass has transformed curriculum design in already many places. So I think it's the right moment to introduce a teaching compass. It translates what we know about student learning and also student well-being into the kind of professional expectations and also the support for educators. At the heart, you find teachers' professional identity, ethical judgment, one of the things that distinguishes most from the artificial intelligence, but also that sense of purpose. And that is what keeps teachers grounded when the winds of change, whether that is curriculum reform, the shifting policies, the growing importance of artificial intelligence, when those winds of change blow in every direction, this gives you the anchor. When teachers feel truly seen by the environment, by communities, not just for what they do, but also for who they are, when they are valued for who they are, when they are supported in their role, in their belonging, and also empowered in their professional growth, in their becoming, then, teachers that just don't survive change, they can actually shape it and form it. So that's really the core of this teaching compass. And then, of course, you can ask yourself what is enabling it. What empowers teachers as agents of change, what builds their individual agency, their professional kind of agency to design innovative learning environments, to work with students, but also their co-agency, working in interaction with different stakeholders, including students, their colleagues, and the collective agency, that, profession, that where teachers work together to frame good practice. And that really, together with teacher well-being, are the core pillars of this learning compass. And that, is what helps teachers swim in this volatile, ambiguous world. Now, when we empower teachers with agency, we ignite the growth of learners. And the learning compass that you have all seen then can become alive with a sense of purpose. And as I mentioned, this is the anchor rooted in professional identity and integrity. You have seen already a number of publications in the Education 2040 curriculum series, which talked about agency, but now we can give you a framework for that, to manage things like curriculum overload, personalizing learning, promoting equity, nurturing values and attitudes, and also really important, navigate the balance between flexibility and autonomy. What we know from our PISA studies is not the volume of learning times that makes success. Now, we often think, the number of hours is what drives outcomes, but it's not so obvious. Here you can see the number of hours that students spend learning in school and the hours they spend learning out of school, tutoring, homework, things like this. And then, at the top, you find a country like Morocco, where students learn almost 50 hours per week, and then Switzerland, where it's just less than 30 hours. But when you look at productivity, you can see in Switzerland, students learn a lot in very little time, whereas in Morocco, they spend a lot of time and learn relatively little. And that really shows us that it's the kind of quality of learning environments, and this is what this teacher compass really is about. the professional competency that shapes that learning environments now. I also want to add another angle also from our PISA survey, and this is about co-agency. The results from our assessments show that the quality of student-teacher relationship, whether teachers or students see that their teachers feel who they are and who they want to become and empower them and accompany them on their journey. That kind of perceived support, the quality of student-teacher relationship is one of the most powerful predictors of self-directed learning, which we all want to see as the outcome of the learning compass. And when students feel, that kind of support, they are much more likely to learn on their own, independently, autonomously. Co-agency fosters a classroom culture where students feel seen, where they feel heard, where they feel valued. And it is also, a great predictor, actually the best predictor for student learning outcomes. Building kind of that relationship, therefore, is very important. That's the co-agency aspect. I want to talk briefly about the collective agency. Also, the collective agency of teachers matters. Data from our Thales survey show that teacher self-efficacy rise as deep professional collaboration becomes more frequent. You can see the more teachers work together as a team, the more they observe other teachers' classes, the more they engage in activities together, the more they take part in collaborative professional learning, the greater their sense of self-efficacy. So here you could see all of those dimensions matter. The individual agency that teachers bring to their work, the co-agency, the quality of relationships, and then the collective agency, how teachers work as a profession. All of those things really matter. Now, let me bring you to another element of the teaching compass, and that is, more traditional one, the knowledge, skills, and attitudes and values that we expect from teachers. Now, educators today need to adapt not just their knowledge, but also the mindset. Think about, integrating digital tools. Think about, fostering global citizenship, supporting student well-being. All of those are on the move. You cannot prepare yourself once forever. You need to sort of engage with this. It is always when teachers grow with the world that learning stays relevant and impactful. Now, the best way to keep our, education system sustainable is for teachers to engage with change. Of course, curriculum change should not fall on the shoulders of teachers alone. That's also clear. And a lasting transformation always requires a systems approach, where policymakers, school leaders, communities, and teachers share that responsibility for curriculum implementation. And when everybody moves in alignment, that's when you get good outcomes. So building those kind of knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values in conjunction is really, really important. When you look at the environment outside, it is very clear that the kind of things that are easy to teach, easy to test are evaporating. Now they're easy to digitize these days. Now you can see how technology intensive tasks are on the rise. And if you put the two things together, you can see the future of work. And clearly, technology is a game changer in education. AI is unlikely to replace teachers because, as I just highlighted, at the core of teaching is that social relational experience. But, teachers who are good at using AI may well replace teachers one day who are struggling with the digital transition. So we should look at this in conjunction. I'm going to come back to this at the end. And of course, there are both opportunities and risks that teachers need to navigate on that. But we also know from our work across OECD countries that teachers often feel unprepared for the both practical and pedagogical challenges they face. And you can see that varies a lot across countries. It is true both for pedagogy of the subject taught, but also for classroom practice. So despite having studied for many years, when teachers end up in the classroom, they find the world is quite different from what they anticipated, what they were prepared for. And so helping people to sort of grow in their profession is really, really important. Very specifically, for example, what you can see here is that social and emotional learning Now, building that student relationship, now supporting student well-being is often still underrepresented in teacher training. Not everywhere. Now you can see on the right side some countries where that is more pronounced, but on the left side, no, sorry, the other opposite. On the right side, you see countries where that is still, quite novel for teachers. So we need also the teaching compass also means a better alignment of the environment, the kind of support systems, the development, and those kinds of outcomes. Good news is that some countries are already quite far in embedding, attitudes and values and relational aspects into their frameworks for teaching. Now, here you can see one example from Singapore, where teachers clearly are expected to be more than subject experts. They must understand themselves. They must understand their students, their communities, and most importantly, be learners themselves. And that relational but also ethical awareness is seen really as the essence of being effective in teaching and providing meaningful learning environments. Teacher preparation always begins with the selection who enters the profession, and what you can see is that sometimes it helps to have experience outside education. You look here at the right side, Sweden, Norway, England, where you have many teachers who have done other things in their life, and that can be a really great, force for change to bring experience from the outside world into the world of education. But you can see, in Portugal and the Czech Republic, it's just about 1 in 5. So it's teachers are mostly, gone through the school, then to university, then back into education. So it may be harder for them to link what they do in school with the real world, and the real world needs to better support them in that. We know that now more than ever, education must be recognized as a shared social responsibility. So building those connections is really, really hard. So when we talk about knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values, look at the whole picture, not just, what ends up, in the teaching of specific subject matter disciplines. So finally, let me bring you once more back to the teaching compass for teachers to effectively navigate and also lead change. Their own cognitive, social, emotional, and also physical well-being needs to be actively supported. Now, teachers cannot give what they do not have for themselves. So let's have a look at that aspect also in more detail. And their well-being, is a key predictor for doing a great job with your students, obviously, but also for sustaining motivation, for sustaining professional growth, and also for sustaining resilience that we expect from teachers. And traditionally, we talk about teacher well-being, or we measure it through structural indicators. We look at teacher salaries, we look at their workload, we look at teacher-student ratios, things that are structural, that are linked to resources. But actually, OECD data show that the relationship between structural resources and teacher well-being and job satisfaction is actually not that clear. That cannot capture most of it. And let me show you that with some data from the OECD. For example, here you can see on the vertical axis how well teachers are paid. The higher you up, the better your salary. On the horizontal axis, you see to what extent teachers are happy to have become a teacher. No? And you can see countries are pretty much all over the place. Now you can see in Korea, teachers are well paid. They're happy with their job. That's what you like. You can see in France, the country where I live, teachers are not so happy and not so well paid. We can understand that too. No, but then you see, countries like Portugal or Chile, where teachers are actually really well paid, but they are not very happy with their job. Now, or you look at Finland or the United States, where teachers are not so well paid, but pretty happy with their job. So the point I really want to make is that money is always an extrinsic demotivator. Now, if you don't pay teachers well, they run away. But money is rarely an intrinsic motivator. No? We need to think about more than that. And actually, the drivers of teacher stress also do not relate to structural indicators. When you look at the time that teachers spend with students, that doesn't, relate that much to the stress that teachers perceive in their work. Teaching 1 hour more, working 1 hour more with students is not so much related to the stress on the vertical axis yet. What drives teacher stress has a lot more to do with, time spent on things that do not relate to what teachers became teachers for, namely to work with students. So that's also a really important part when we think about the learning compass, to think about an environment where teachers can flourish in their work, where we put, the work with students, the work with their colleagues, the work with communities at the center, and minimize all of the distractors, all of the kind of time that is taken away with things that are unrelated to this. Now, that's really what that student well-being is. So structural indicators are important, but we need to look at that aspect of teacher well-being, the cognitive, social, emotional, and physical well-being in greater detail. Now you will ask me, well, we are living in the digital world. He didn't talk about AI, but I will do that in conclusion because it is, of course, really, really important. And so let me come to this. Now, the Teaching Compass is actually very actively exploring how human teachers and AI agents can work together in future classrooms. Now, this is what this is about. It's not one replacing the other. It's building meaningful relationships, meaningful synergies. For example, what you can see when it comes to professional identity and ethical reasoning, what AI can do really well for you is to work with something that is task-oriented, also, to help you, become conscious of environments, give you good feedback as a teacher, understand some of your biases. But, AI lacks that self-awareness, that consciousness that is so critical for this, also that moral agency. It inundates you with information, but it can't, decide what's right and wrong, what's good and bad. That's really where teachers are so central, as individuals who are self-reflected, who are value-driven, and also ethically accountable. But that's where the synergies can lie. When you look at the interaction with students, clearly AI is becoming rapidly better on this. The biggest advancement in AI is on the area of social competence. And AI can do a lot to give students structured support, automated feedback. Some really, really interesting examples. Also, AI can now pretty well understand how students learn and how they learn differently, and then, make their learning experiences more granular, more adaptive, and so on. But what humans can add to this is that authentic dialogue. We all know what changes your life is the 5 minutes that you have with your teacher outside the classroom. Now, that mentorship, that emotional connection, incredibly important. When it comes to processing and knowledge, clearly, AI can provide you with rapid, consistent information at, an incredible kind of breadth. But, humans bring the depths of understanding, the deeper reasoning. It's slower, but much more kind of personal. When it comes to creativity and relationship, AI is working on recognizing patterns. It can, find out something about people's emotions, but it always makes predictions on what happened to other people in similar situations. AI judges people on what other people have done in similar situations. And that's really not what we want to see in a focus in the classroom. You want to really see the unique aspects that a learner brings to this, that the original insight, the intuitive leaps, the genuine emotional connections. So there are really important complementarities that we bring to bear in this learning compass. Learning compass is meant to become a tool that gives us orientation where, teachers can shape their work as humans, complemented and supported by the artificial intelligence we created in our computers. So I really hope, that this is going to become the tool that helps us reimagine the work of teachers for the future and bring our learning compass to life. And my gratitude and thanks once again to everyone who has helped us create that vision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andreas. It's really encouraging to hear your encouragement. And now we can really deep dive into some of your presentations and how it makes sense to real students and teachers and others in the classroom and on the ground. So first topic is aligning teaching and learning. And for that, Nadia and Edwin, so you will be the panelist, and let's have a conversation about what Andreas presented. So you saw from Andreas' piece and presentation that the co-agency really matters, the quality of student-teacher relationship. So maybe Nadia, if you can share with us a concrete example of a time when your teacher really made you feel seen, heard, and valued.
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you very much, Miho. So when you asked me that question, I was actually reminded by the one moment when I was in fourth grade. And I think this moment was, it was very precious to me that it's still stuck in my head to this day. So I really loved writing stories ever since I was small. And one day in fourth grade, I wrote a short story in my notebook, and my English teacher happened to see it and she happened to read it. And I remember what she told me that day. She told me that she loved my writing and that she would be the first person to buy a novel if I were to publish one. And at that time, I didn't even think of publishing a novel. I just simply loved writing. But when she said that, I think it made me become, I dared to dream in a way. And I wanted to try to achieve such a goal. So I decided to take the chance, and I was able to have my novel published back in 2023. So when my novel's already published, I immediately sent her a copy, and I made sure to write her name, in the thank you page. She was super happy. She really appreciated it, and she even cried tears of joy. But I just wanted to highlight how the fact that a simple phrase, especially ones that are being said by teachers to students, can really take the student very far in life. And I think it's very important that teachers appreciate the hard work of students and they recognize their strengths and, bring them along to that journey.
Excellent. Thank you, Nadia. So words matter, and teachers learn the role. Words do not cost. So just a little bit of your conscience can make a difference for the students. And then speaking of the words, I remember in your student group, you once discussed about the magic words that matter for the students to have more motivation, and detrimental words that students hate to hear, that demotivate or discourage. Can you share with us some of those magic words or detrimental words?
Sure. So I think in terms of magic words, I think it's mostly words which makes us students feel appreciated and feel recognized for our actions and effort, throughout the journey, what we did. For example, would be, let's say a teacher told a student, you did amazing designing the PowerPoint for today's presentation. It really shows what the student did well, especially, throughout the making of the PowerPoint, let's say, rather than simply saying, good job, I think the specificity really helps the students feel motivated, especially about their strengths. About detrimental words, I think these are mostly words that tend to point towards the person themselves rather than the action. So, for example, let's say instead of saying you are forgetful when a student forgets to bring their textbook, it is more preferable to say you should remember to bring your textbook next time. So here it shows that it doesn't specifically point towards the person themselves, but it points towards the action and what the student can improve in the future. So I think as students, we really appreciate it when teachers are willing to give some of their time to listen to our projects, our opinions, and understand what we have in mind, or also our experiences. And I believe that everything starts with trust and connection, which is very much emphasized within the co-agency section in the Teaching Compass.
Thank you, Nadia. Let me ask you one more question, because I also remember in the student group that when students are struggling in learning, it's harder for them to build trust between students and teachers. So then when students struggle in learning, what can teachers do to support you or the struggling students to find the meaning in learning again, or reconnect to a sense of purpose in learning?
Thank you for that question, Miho. I think it's very important to talk about that as well. I believe one thing that teachers can really do would be to change their approach in delivering a certain subject. I'd like to specify an example, let's say, in mathematics, because I feel like a lot of students find mathematics to be quite a challenging subject. I think it would be really interesting if a teacher could make their approach of teaching to be fun and interactive, especially at the start of the year, because this is more like a first impression towards the students, where their first impression will drive their whole academic year. And if they're able to think that math is fun, it would be amazing. The whole year, they would feel that they have a positive perception towards mathematics itself. But that's just one example of a subject. But I think personally, from my personal experience, I have ever noticed my biology teacher was actually examining plants outside my school, and he was like staring at it very intently, and I was wondering what he was doing, and turns out he was observing the color, he was observing the texture, and it just shows that my teachers have so much passion in what they're teaching. And that day it sort of opened up my mind that, the passion that teachers have, it can be delivered to students as well. And it makes me think that biology teaches us everything about the world. And it actually drove me on my journey in science research. It reaffirmed my purpose for my journey that day.
Okay. Thank you, Nadia. It's an excellent example of it's not only the subject knowledge, but the passion about that and the subject really is transmitted to the student. Thank you. And speaking of that passion, yes, thank you. Thank you. Speaking of the passion, Edwin, we know you're a passion. You have passion about project-based learning, but we also hear in teachers group that there are some hesitant to really launch a project-based learning with an well-defined project, because students may fail by trying, but learn from the mistakes. But also parents often say, oh, Edwin, please do not do project-based, but prepare my kids for the exams. So we hear all of these examples, but then in our teaching compass, what can teachers do to really allow students to explore and be creative and make mistakes and learn from mistakes and grow? But teachers do have a lot of pressure from system or parents. What can teachers do?
Thank you, Miho. I think we do need a culture that normalizes risk-taking and failure as learning, right? So I think what teachers need in terms of support would be school leaders who openly celebrate processes and not just results, like showcasing student projects that failed but led to deep learning. And we also need parents who are informed partners, who understand that creativity and resilience may matter more in the long term than short-term grades. So, for example, in my school, we have student-led conversations. So not the typical parent-teacher meetings where we just discuss academic progress and grades, but students drive these meetings with their parent and teacher, sharing about their projects, their involvement in co-curricular activities, their failures, their learning, their hopes, and how parents can support them. And I think overall, in terms of what society can do to support, we need a society that emphasizes the development of social emotional competencies, to manage the pain and regret and frustration of failures and setbacks, so that we can redirect these emotions towards progress and eventual success. And of course, we need to develop teachers' social emotional competencies, like what Andreas mentioned, who can in turn empower students to develop them. And I think, secondly, we need assessment practices that value growth. So teachers need professional time and autonomy to design meaningful formative assessments that allows and celebrates risk-taking and failure. So, for example, I'm very grateful for my principal, Lee Ping, for spearheading the development and implementation of AI in the school to support these feedback pedagogies. So I would say culture and right assessment.
Okay, thank you. Following your answer, we always thought you really grounded in who you are, your passion about the subject. And so can you describe us about your interpretation of anchor? What does it mean, anchor, for you in the teaching compass? Is it important to have that anchor in the teaching compass?
Oh, yes. I love the metaphor of the anchor. I think the anchor is our ever-growing self. Like Parker Palmer said, we teach who we are. And I think we can also teach who we become, right? So our professional and personal identity is a very important part of how we can become effective as teachers. So I think it's important to discover our selfhood, our strengths, our vulnerabilities. So, like for example, in my school, we look into positive psychology, the 24 VIA character strengths for both students and teachers. So we can use our strengths, and some may call that, our top values or virtues, to help us connect with and impact our students. And another anchor I would say is our ikigai, right? Like, what is the intersection between our passion, our talent, and our student needs? So, I know of different teachers, for example, teaching the concept of science. With using their passions and talents to meet students' different needs. So, for example, I have a teacher who loves sports, teaching in an all-boys school. So he brought his restless students to the soccer field, and through football drills, he actually taught the students the difference between speed, velocity, and acceleration. And I have a student aspiring to be a teacher, Yi Cheng, I think is here today. He's a songwriter, and he actually composed a song incorporating physics principles and motivational concepts. He brought his guitar to class and sang the song to his students to connect them to the subject and inspire them. So I would say the anchor would be your growing selfhood and finding your ikigai.
Excellent. So final question for you is, as Andreas presented about the collective agency. So if there are teachers like you in group, collectively, we can imagine your school is thriving and flourishing. But then how can you create that school ethos, which is not easy? So could you share with us some tips to create those school ethos grounded in shared purpose, trust, and collaboration?
Yes, I think like what you mentioned about collective agency, I think collective agency, firstly, within the school, the communal and collaborative culture can actually be developed through, things like mentoring, right? Like more senior teachers guiding the younger ones. It can be built through professional learning teams. Like, at our school, we call professional learning teams PLT, play, learn, and try. We do action research on various topics of interest, and it's okay. You just try. It's okay to fail, right? And next is also collective agency with other stakeholders. Like we have industry attachment with where teachers go to corporations, industries to do attachment to be updated as to what's happening in the real world, and also collective agency within the country. Like in Singapore, I think we are very blessed where nationally we have a strong ecosystem of collaboration between the Ministry of Education, National Institute of Education, and also schools, and also related organizations like Principals Academy, right? And I'm just so blessed to have worked with many of my distinguished NIE colleagues like Suzanne and Imelda Wu Ting, and recently Jia and Biling. And I think all this collective agency within the school, with other stakeholders, within the whole country itself, in the education fraternity is very important. Thank you, Miho.
Okay, thank you, Edwin. So Nadia and Edwin, thank you very much. And the audience, you can ask questions in the chat box. Now let's move on to the second theme about the quality and relevance of teaching, including teacher preparation. And you saw from Andreas' PowerPoint that there are some that the students may be facing dilemma to choose, continue to pursue the teaching profession or choose another profession. So maybe as the aspiring teacher. So Kenji, would you like to share with us what is the dilemma you're facing?
Okay, thank you, Miho. Many aspiring teachers often wonder, will I be happy if I become a teacher? While salary may be one of the concerns, what troubles them the most is how they will take care of themselves. Uh, in other words, their biggest worry is whether they will be able to continue being a teacher in the long term. Thank you.
Okay, then how are you overcoming this dilemma?
Okay, thank you. We need to develop a positive mindset. For example, recognizing that teachers are essential to society. This mindset can be built collaboratively, not just individually. In Ukraine, a teacher named Anna facilitated group discussion where teachers sit in a circle to share their struggle and reflect on the purpose. Such self-care dialogue among teachers could be good practice for aspiring teachers as well. Thank you.
Thank you. That is also the reflection of collective agency among teachers as well. Then you saw the PISA data that it's not the number of hours, but the quality of time students spend. And do you feel you're ready or confident to design a class where the quality of teaching time, the quality of time you can ensure rather than just implementing your lesson plan?
I think that aspiring teachers feel confident to ready to teach at good quality. Aspiring teachers need time to explore and share their own teaching style. However, unlike proficient teachers, aspiring teachers often struggle to draw on the past experience to guide their lesson design, which increasing the anxiety. Uh, my opinion is we are not working alone. We are educate students together with many other teachers and aspiring teachers. Considering the global teacher shortage and decreasing the number of aspiring teachers, it is more important to support one another. Say, help me, we need it, and collaborate across national borders. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kenji. Then changing the teacher preparation programs. And Bogdan, what can you do as a policymaker? Because we know from research that changing or aligning the school curriculum change with teacher preparation program, many countries struggle because of the academic institutional higher education autonomy. So what can you do as a policymaker?
I think once again the answer is the co-agency, because of course I am speaking of our experience, but I think it's the case in the rest of the countries through our interactions. There are different silos. You have universities, you have teachers, you have parents and students with their needs. You have business, because we forget business, and business is very, very involved right now in the education. It's very eager to participate. And of course, we have NGOs. The idea is to put everybody together. And the role of the government is to make each other understand the other's challenges and to co-create this curriculum. Because in terms of teachers, we all agree on the fact that the teacher role is changed. We need socio-emotional learning. We need a different approach. We need for them to accompany the kids. We need for the teacher to be part of a individualized learning of the children, to guide him, to have influence even if he is not there. So the idea is not only with the Learning Compass, we understood the learning needs and the learning outcomes. With this Teaching Compass, we have another answer. The teachers, we know what we want for them. And the next question is, which kind of curriculum we will develop in order to make the best of the teacher we create. So the idea is to put them together and to have a real interaction.
Excellent. I have more questions, but for the interest of time, I invite audience to ask questions for Kenji and Bogdan in the chat box. And we move to the third round of panelists, Lisa and Ike. So yes, of course, Andreas presented in the last slide about how human agents and AI agents can flourish in the classroom. So Lisa, as a researcher, can you share with us any new insight about how human teachers and AI agent support can coexist or even flourish and be better? And Ike as well, what would be the risks and opportunities you see as an ed tech about, because we know we observe the tool overload. Many teachers already tell us, oh, Miho and the team, we don't know which tool to use because there are many edtech companies and AI companies starting to do a lot of sales. So how can we ensure the teachers' well-being in that sense? So Lisa and Ike.
Thank you. So I might perhaps start by drawing us back to some of the conversations around social and emotional learning and the renewed value of social and emotional dispositions and creativity in education. And certainly our research has been shining a light on longitudinal work of embedding approaches, creative pedagogies that focus on collective creativity within schools with teachers and also initial teacher education. And I think that the focus on social and emotional learning is one of the key things that we need to think about when we are reflecting on how we might democratize AI. So I think there's a link here between some of the gaps that we have in our current education systems and where we need to move to. I'd like to offer again a little bit perhaps of a definition around collective creativity, which centers on learner collaboration and inquiry, dialogic inquiry, communication and negotiation and divergent thinking on ideas and problems together. And these very important focus on humanizing these aspects of learning that the Compass is really focusing on. And we've been focusing on our work, case studies, longitudinal case studies with schools. So I think in terms of AI then, and thinking about AI, one of the crucial questions, and Andreas talked about this, is to think about how we use AI information and so our human capacity to make ethical and responsible judgments individually and collectively is going to be really crucial. And these are going to be value judgments, which are relational qualities, and they need to draw on our social and emotional and cultural connections with each other in the world. So again, we're focusing really back on those aspects, those dimensions of learning. And this is a really creative process. So one of the challenges that we have, and I just want to mention a bit of our international research on initial teacher education. We had some international research across 5 countries focusing on integrating creative pedagogies, which include arts-based learning and problem-based learning, which we call world building. And certainly there was a pattern across most of the countries, apart from Iceland, that have a focus on creativity and policy, that 90% of the initial teacher education students, over 350 of them, did not feel that they had a creative professional identity. And this has been mentioned before. So I think one of the challenges in AI is really thinking about how we can nurture and activate and sustain initial teacher education's professional identities so that they can make those informed judgments when they're using AI. So again, perhaps we need to move to the idea of transformational creativity that's deployed to make positive, meaningful, and potentially enduring difference to the world. So I think that teachers need to work ethically with social and emotional competency to democratize AI. And I think that these are the areas that we really need to focus on, how that social and emotional competency is activated in localized settings, so in response to communities and children that schools and teachers serve. And again, just one final point is our research has really showed that when that does happen and when teachers do feel empowered in terms of their creative identity, it brings the joy back into teaching. And there's a sense of increased self-worth. So I think we have a responsibility to really shine a light on where that's happening well through longitudinal research. I hope that's okay. Thank you.
And I think to respond to overload and stress, I always think that what brings stress, apart from what Andreas has already presented, is that it's not necessarily about the load that we have. We feel stressed when there's a huge distance between what we say we're doing and what we're actually doing. For example, when we talk about social emotional skills, we're often saying we're developing these competencies, but what are we actually doing in the classroom? Or are we really sitting behind a computer and mapping these out in our curriculum or putting them into Likert skills? So I think, our work at HoloTracker is really about focusing on allowing teachers and students to do what they do best naturally, organically, make observations, have conversations in the classroom, and say all these things are observable and you can track them and you can support them. And then you can have a powerful conversation about them later on.
You're on mute, Miho. Hey, Miho.
Oh, sorry. So thank you, Lisa and Ike. Now I would like to invite Andreas to address some of the points the panelists made and what makes sense from international perspective and data and research from Andreas' knowledge so that we can really make sense of those concepts.
Yeah,
Andreas?
thank you. Thank you, Mio. And I must say, I was actually amazed how your panels brought almost all of the dimensions of the teaching compass to life. You know, the individual agency, the co-agency, the collective agency, the teacher competencies, the knowledge, skills, attitudes, but also very much values, and also the aspects of teacher well-being. I like, how Nadia put it. Everything starts with trust and connections. Now, that's really what the essence of teaching is, and also that growth mindset that she, highlighted. That the teachers can enable students to go beyond their limits and to see to find that inner strength. I think the point from Edwin that we need to better normalize risk-taking and failure and see that as opportunities for learning and to redirect emotions to progress and success. I really think that's the essence of good teaching, very much related to the agency part, and that we need assessment practices that value student learning growth. Also, that I think a really important part of the learning compass. And I think Kenji brought the well-being aspect really out very well when he said that that if teachers can take care of themselves and if society support teachers to take care of themselves, then good teaching can become sustainable. Teachers will not get exhausted, but they can actually pursue that excellence through that support. And then I thought, Bogdan made a really important point, and what governments can do in all of that is to help everyone see the perspectives of others. And that's, I think, a perfect illustration of what co-agency means, to really ensure that the whole piece comes together, that we see this as a kind of symphony. And then Lisa came back to the identity partner, the importance of strengthening professional identity so that we can build the complementarities between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. Ethical judgment, I think you highlighted relational qualities, social, emotional, cultural connections, and I think importantly you framed them as skills. You used the words of skills, not as kind of personality traits. I think that's very important. And then last but not least, you also highlighted this is going to bring the joy back to teaching, and we should not forget that we do not see this as a kind of transactional task, but really something that can bring the joy not just to learners but also teachers. And very important point made by Ike, the self-awareness. How do we actually see ourselves in this picture? How teachers get that mirror to see, what they're doing every day. So I thought, the panelists were almost the perfect composition to highlight, the different dimensions and ideas and concepts of this learning compass. And I think all we have to do is to bring it to life in every classroom.
Thank you very much for all the panelists and Andreas as well in the middle of your busy time. And we know you value our project and community and the audience. We hope to see you maybe face-to-face or online at one of our Education 2040 meeting. Thank you. So panelists, please smile. And Andreas too, thank you for smiling.